She walks into your life like a dream. She's soft-spoken, magnetic, understanding in a way no one else ever was. She laughs at your jokes, mirrors your energy, makes you feel seen, powerful, needed. And just when you start to fall, just when you drop your guard and hand her the keys to your soul, something shifts. She starts pulling away. She makes you question yourself. She disappears into cold silence, and you're left wondering if you ever meant anything at all. But here's the cruelest part. You still want her. You still crave the version of her that never truly existed. Nietzsche warned about this. He didn't hate women. He feared the illusion. He saw that most men don't fall in love with real women. They fall in love with projections of comfort, salvation, and validation. And the women they choose, some know exactly what they're doing. This isn't about all women. This is about the archetype Nietzsche feared, the emotionally manipulative feminine force that seduces not through lust, but through control, masked as connection. And most men never see it coming, because they're not looking for a woman. They're looking for a mother, a savior, a cure for their loneliness. And that's exactly how they get destroyed. Nietzsche wrote, "When a woman has scholarly inclinations, there is usually something wrong with her sexuality. On the surface, it sounds like arrogance. But dig deeper, and it's not about intelligence. It's about emotional displacement. Nietzsche believed certain women didn't desire love. They desired dominion. Not because they were evil, but because the feminine shadow, the part of the psyche that seeks control, power, and self-worth through domination, was never acknowledged, integrated, or healed. He saw it in his own relationships. He was seduced and broken over and over again. But instead of blaming them blindly, he turned inward. He realized the real trap wasn't her. It was him. Because men don't just get deceived by women. They get deceived by their own fantasies of women. They want softness. They want understanding. They want to be seen, saved, and mothered. And so, when a woman appears with those traits, even if they're part of a performance, he hands over everything. His time, his mind, his emotional stability, his sense of self. And by the time he realizes she wasn't what she seemed, he's already addicted. Nietzsche once said, "Ah, women. They make the highs higher and the lows more frequent." There's a kind of chaos that only certain women bring into a man's life, not the chaos of drama or fighting, but the emotional chaos of being seen one moment and invisible the next, of being adored, then discarded, of being pulled close, only to be pushed away. It's spiritual whiplash, and men keep coming back for more. Why? Because they confuse emotional volatility with passion. They confuse chaos with chemistry. They think being emotionally destroyed must mean it's real. But Nietzsche knew better. He saw how this type of woman doesn't love the man. She feeds on his need to be loved. And if you're a man who doesn't know himself, who hasn't confronted his inner wounds, who thinks love is about being saved instead of being whole, you'll walk straight into her arms, and she'll tear you apart. But here's what makes this so dangerous. She doesn't always know she's doing it. The feminine shadow, just like the masculine one, is unconscious. That means she might believe she loves you. She might believe she's helping you. She might even convince herself that she's the victim when you fall apart. Because manipulation doesn't always come from malice. Sometimes it comes from emptiness, from needing to be needed, from fearing abandonment, from using love as leverage because it's the only language she knows. And if you haven't faced your own shadow as a man, you'll fall for it. You'll call it destiny. You'll call it a soulmate. You'll think pain means depth. But it doesn't. It means projection. It means dependency. It means you're not in love. You're in survival mode. Nietzsche saw it all. He didn't say, avoid women. He said, know which parts of yourself are choosing her. Because not every connection is sacred. Some are karmic. Some are trauma bonds. Some are subconscious replays of wounds you never healed. And the most dangerous woman? She doesn't need to hit you, scream at you, or cheat on you. She just needs to mirror everything you've ever longed for, and then slowly withdraw it, piece by piece, until you're left chasing the ghost of something that never truly existed. That's not love. That's entrapment. But it works. Because most men would rather chase a fantasy than face themselves. And that's where this begins. Not with blaming women, not with hating the feminine, but with confronting the unconscious parts of yourself that crave validation more than truth. If you don't know your worth, because here's the harsh reality, a woman who withholds you attract what you haven't healed. If you don't know your shadow, you'll fall for hers. If you don't have power, you'll give it to someone who never deserved it. And in the end, she won't destroy you. You will, by betraying yourself in the name of love. So the question is it really her you're in love with? Or is it the illusion she created to reflect your unmet needs? And the deeper question, what are you willing to lose to finally wake up? Because Friedrich Nietzsche didn't write for romantics. He wrote for the awakened, for those who could see through the masks and still choose truth over fantasy. And now, the choice is yours. She doesn't destroy you with fire. She destroys you with absence, with slow withdrawal, with ghosting your emotions while staying physically present, with praise that turns into silence, with affection that feels like bait, and love that becomes leverage. Nietzsche knew this wasn't about women as individuals. It was about archetypes, patterns of energy, shadow forces that dwell in both men and women, often unconscious, often masked as love. This particular archetype? It's what Jung would later call the anima-possessed woman, the woman who embodies everything a man subconsciously projects his unmet needs onto. To Nietzsche, this wasn't about gender war. It was about psychological clarity. He once wrote, "In revenge and in love, woman is more barbarous than man, not because she is cruel, but because she is closer to her instincts. A man, taught to rationalize, to suppress, to perform, often cuts himself off from his primal energy. He grows up domesticated, obedient, desperate to be chosen. But a certain kind of woman? She hasn't disconnected from her instincts, and if her own wounds have festered long enough, she'll use that instinct not to love, but to dominate emotionally. And the man who lacks self-awareness, he becomes her prey, not in a calculated way, but in a karmic loop. She plays out her control issues. He plays out his abandonment issues. And neither of them know it's happening. Until it's too late. This is the hidden truth. It's not about her. It's about what she awakens in you. The chaos, the confusion, the obsession. They don't come from love. They come from the parts of yourself you've ignored for years. Because when a man hasn't dealt with his wounds, he doesn't choose partners from strength. He chooses from void. And that void is bottomless. You think she's ignoring you? No. She's revealing how much of your worth depends on her attention. You think she's hurting you? No. She's mirroring your unconscious belief that love must come with pain. You think she's confusing? No. She's showing you how fragmented you are. But most men won't accept this. They'll chase her. They'll worship her. They'll put her on a pedestal. Not because she's divine, but because they feel empty. And this emptiness makes them vulnerable to illusion. Nietzsche saw it in himself, in Lou Salome, the woman he adored, who rejected him. He fell for the image, not the person. And when she walked away, it wasn't just heartbreak. It was ego death. That's the core of this dynamic. These women don't break your heart. They break your false self. The part of you that thought love meant approval. The part that believed validation would fill the inner void. The part that never questioned where your desires were actually coming from. And here's what Nietzsche uncovered. You will keep repeating this pattern until you confront the part of yourself that needs it. Because deep down, you're not addicted to her. You're addicted to the feeling of almost being enough, of nearly being chosen, of constantly proving your worth. And that addiction is rooted in your past, in the mother who withheld affection, in the girl who loved you until you needed her, in the belief that real love must be earned, chased, or survived. Nietzsche never said this directly, but his philosophy pointed to it. The will to power begins within. Not dominance over others, but sovereignty over your own unconscious. When you're not sovereign, you'll fall into anyone's orbit, especially hers. Because she's not just a woman. She's a mirror. And what she reflects back is devastating. That you don't really love yourself. That your strength was a mask. That your confidence was borrowed. And that, deep down, you still believe love must hurt. This is the shadow dance. And the more unconscious you are, the more seductive it becomes. But once you wake up, once you see the pattern for what it is, the illusion shatters. You stop chasing her. You stop blaming her. You stop building your identity around her approval. And you start facing the real question. What part of me needed her to feel whole? Because until you answer that, you'll keep attracting women who awaken your wounds, not your truth. You'll call it fate. You'll call it love. But Nietzsche would call it delusion. He once said, "Every deep thinker is more afraid of being understood than of being misunderstood." Why? Because to be truly understood is to be seen without illusion. And that's what most men fear. They don't fear women. They fear losing the fantasy that a woman will complete them. But the truth? No one can complete you. Not until you've made peace with your own fragmentation. Nietzsche didn't offer solutions. He offered awakenings. He asked the questions no one dared to ask. He forced men to look inward. to dismantle the illusions they'd mistaken for love. And that's what this moment asks of you. Not to become bitter, not to hate women, but to become so rooted in self-awareness that no woman, no matter how enchanting, can pull you out of alignment. Because the truth is, the kind of woman who destroys you doesn't just exist outside of you. She lives inside your psyche. She is the part of you that still believes you are unworthy. The part that trades truth for fantasy. The part that fears solitude so deeply you'll choose chaos over silence. And once you see that, everything changes. You stop looking for salvation. You stop romanticizing the feminine shadow. You stop letting your unhealed wounds drive your desire. And from that place, you don't chase love. You attract truth. You attract the kind of woman who doesn't need to dominate because she's integrated her own shadow. The kind of love that doesn't mirror your chaos, but reflects your wholeness. But that begins with you, with finally waking up from the trance. Because the woman wasn't the trap. Your own illusion was. You thought it was just a breakup. You thought you'd move on, that time would fade the obsession, that one day you'd forget the sound of her voice, that the way she touched you, disarmed you, broke you, would become a distant memory. But it didn't, because this wasn't just about love. This was a psychological wound, a fracture, not in your heart, but in your identity. And Nietzsche understood the danger of such wounds, because they don't just hurt. They change who you are. The deeper you fall for the illusion of a woman who mirrors your emptiness, the more you lose the core of your masculine essence. You become passive. You become addicted. You become unsure of your thoughts, your power, your worth. And you start organizing your life around one silent question. How do I win her back? But it's never really about her. It's about winning yourself back from the prison of emotional dependence. Because when you fall for this type of woman, the anima-possessed illusion, you're not just falling in love, you're falling into regression. You stop being a man. You become a boy again, chasing approval, pleasing to survive, shrinking to be chosen. And in doing so, you abandon everything Nietzsche warned you to protect. Your will, your power, your becoming. This is the unseen consequence. Not that she left you, but that you left yourself to try and keep her. And now you don't even recognize who you are. This is what Nietzsche called the crisis of becoming, where the self dissolves because the man chooses fantasy over truth, validation over solitude. You start editing your personality. You laugh when you don't mean it. You say yes when everything in your body screams no. You perform, and you perform well, but your soul pays the price. And over time, something much darker sets in. Bitterness. You begin to resent her for not loving you the way you imagined. You start hating women as a whole. You generalize, dismiss, attack, not because you're cruel, but because you were never taught to mourn the illusion you created. Nietzsche saw this too, that men who don't confront their shadow often externalize it. They make the woman the villain, instead of asking the harder question, why did I let myself be consumed? This is why so many men stay stuck. They confuse rejection with injustice. They think she took something from them, when in reality, they gave it away, willingly, blindly, desperately. Because deep down, the pain wasn't caused by her leaving. It was caused by realizing you had no self to return to. And that's the abyss. Nietzsche didn't just write about it, he lived it. After Lou Salome's rejection, he collapsed, not just emotionally, but spiritually. He spiraled into isolation. He questioned the meaning of desire, of love, of connection itself. And yet, he emerged more powerful. Because he realized the love he thought he wanted wasn't real. It was a projection of the parts of himself he hadn't yet claimed. This is the transformation most men never reach. They stay stuck in blame. They chase the next woman. They rebound into repetition. And the pattern continues. But if you break the cycle, if you truly introspect, you'll see something terrifying but liberating. She never had power over you. You just gave it away because you wanted to be loved more than you wanted to be free. You wanted to be seen more than you wanted to see yourself. And the price of that longing? It was your sovereignty. That's why this pain doesn't go away with time. It only fades when you stop lying to yourself, when you stop romanticizing dysfunction, when you stop labeling obsession as passion, when you stop mistaking trauma bonding for connection. Because here's the truth. Nietzsche quietly whispered between his sharpest lines. Most men don't love women. They love escape. Escape from themselves, from their loneliness, from the weight of becoming. And women, especially the ones who intuitively understand the male wound, can smell that desperation. They don't need to hurt you intentionally. They just need to reflect what you unconsciously crave. And you'll hand over everything. That's the danger. You think she betrayed you, but the real betrayal was the one you committed against your own masculine core, the part of you that knew, the part that saw the red flags, the part that silenced itself to stay in the game. And now you live in the ruins. But Nietzsche wouldn't pity you. He would push you deeper. He would force you to mine the collapse for wisdom. Because that's the truth most people never understand. The feminine shadow may have cracked you, but it also opened a portal back to your own center. You now know what happens when you abandon yourself. You know what manipulation feels like. You know what it means to fall for a ghost. And with that awareness, something shifts. You begin to rebuild. But this time, not as a boy looking to be saved. As a man, choosing wholeness over hunger. This is the individuation Nietzsche was pointing toward. The birth of the Übermensch, the higher man who is no longer governed by social scripts, by unconscious longing, or by the pull of the archetypal feminine that once ruled his soul. He no longer blames the woman. He thanks her, because her leaving, her coldness, her chaos, it awakened him. And now he rises not with bitterness, but with brutal clarity. Because once you've seen the illusion, you can't go back. And once you reclaim your center, the very woman who once pulled you apart will feel small in your presence, not because you hate her, but because you've outgrown the need for her. And that, Mawa, that's when you become dangerous. Not to women, but to everything that once controlled you. You no longer look at women as salvation. You no longer feel small in their presence. You no longer mistake validation for value. You become selective. You become disciplined. You become the kind of man who doesn't ask to be chosen. He chooses. Not from ego, from clarity. Because now you see clearly. You see the manipulation for what it was. You see the tests for what they were. You see your own desperation. And you meet it with love, not shame. And from that place, you can finally experience a kind of love Nietzsche hinted at, but rarely saw. Love without need. Connection without collapse. Intimacy without identity loss. Because the man who has met himself doesn't fear being alone. And that's why he's dangerous. She can no longer weaponize distance. She can no longer bait him with silence. She can no longer use love as leverage. He doesn't need it. He is it. That's the liberation Nietzsche was chasing. Not freedom from women. Freedom from the fantasy of women. From the spell they cast in the minds of men who haven't yet met themselves. So what now? Now, you rise. Now, you rewrite the story. You don't run from your pain. You learn from it. You don't seek revenge. You alchemize it. You don't stay broken. You rebuild, stronger, clearer, colder. And the next time a woman enters your life with that same alluring chaos, you'll smile. Not because you're weak, but because you see it now. You see her game. You see your old self. And you choose something else. Self-respect, emotional precision, unbreakable presence. That's the Nietzschean man. Not cold, not bitter, but whole. And once you become that, you'll attract something you never knew existed. A woman who doesn't test your value. She honors it. A woman who doesn't manipulate your hunger. She mirrors your calm. A woman who doesn't pull you apart, because she's already made peace with herself. But you can't meet her until you become him. The version of you who is done begging, chasing, folding. The version of you who no longer fears the silence, because in that silence, you remembered something powerful. You were never incomplete. You were just asleep. Now you're awake. Now you're free. Comment below. I'm done chasing illusions. Like, share. Subscribe to Psychatic for more raw philosophical awakenings. And tap super thanks if this helped you reclaim your truth.